Another day, another Republican book freakout to talk about here. So, apparently, a Texas teacher was fired after assigning an illustrated Anne Frank book. They say the graphic novel adaptation was released in 2018, and it's faithful to the original text in Anne Frank's diary. So, look, I'm sure you guys know the whole Anne Frank story. Lived under Nazi Germany. In no way, shape, or form is this inappropriate, right? But apparently some people took issue with it. A Texas middle school teacher has been fired after assigning an unapproved illustrated version of Anne Frank's diary to her 8th grade reading class, per a report from KFDM, a spokesperson for Hampshire Fannet ISD, located south of Beaumont. We don't need all this information. Released a statement confirming the teacher was sent home on Wednesday after reading a passage from Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation, in which Frank wrote about male and female genitalia. An investigation into the incident has since ensued. As you may be aware, following concerns regarding curricular selections in your student's reading class, a substitute teacher has been facilitating the class since Wednesday, September 13th. Read a district statement sent to parents obtained by KFDM. The district is currently in the process of posting to a secure, high-quality, full-time teacher as quickly as possible. So, look, we're talking about middle schoolers here. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's when I started taking sex education in school. It was in middle school. So we were like directly learning about the reproductive functions of your private parts for men and women. But just bringing up genitalia within the context of a freaking Anne Frank book crosses a line to these people? I mean, this is astonishing. This is like, let's baby the kids. I got news for you. By the time they're in middle school, they're familiar with a hell of a lot more than a line in an Anne Frank book. You know, there's this thing called the internet, which goes quite deep on these sorts of topics. Anne Frank, a Jewish teenager, journaled her experiences as she and her family hid for 2 years during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. Her diary, which was published in 1947, has been used in schools for decades to educate students on the Holocaust. While previous versions of Frank's diary omitted sections in which he wrote about sexuality, the 2018 graphic novel, adapted by Ari Folman and illustrated by David Polanski, remains faithful to the original text. Folman's parents are Holocaust survivors. The district sent an email to parents on Tuesday calling the content the teacher read to the class inappropriate, adding the reading of that content will cease immediately. Your student's teacher will communicate her apologies to you and your students as soon as she has expressed those apologies to us. So not only are you not allowed to do it, but now you also got to grovel. So we're firing you, but also you got to grovel. While district officials claim the adaptation of Anne Frank's diary was not approved, it was included on a reading list sent to parents at the start of the school year, KFDM reports. The investigation will determine if the teacher pivoted from the original approved curriculum or if administrators were aware of the book being part of the class. The unabridged version of Frank's diary has also recently sparked controversy in other Texas schools, including at Dallas-Fort Worth, where it was pulled from library shelves last year, along with the Bible. In Florida, the graphic novel adaptation was removed from a high school in Vero Beach earlier this year after a parent complained about its sexual content. Look, I don't know what else there is to say. Apparently, there's massive disagreement around the country as to what age you can teach, health class and learn about sexual reproduction. But like I said, where I grew up in New York, we started learning about it in middle school. To have some stuff written in Anne Frank's diary involving genitalia, the fact that this is controversial to anybody is genuinely astonishing to me, right? But guess what? I got more for you. Ta-Nehisi Coates attends school board meeting to back teacher told to stop using his book on racism. So here's another teacher who's getting disciplinary action because they did Ta-Nehisi Coates' book Between the World and Me. And this made some white students feel uncomfortable because Ta-Nehisi Coates writes about race and the experience growing up as a black man. And apparently that's unacceptable. Author Ta-Nehisi Coates sat silently through a school board meeting in South Carolina to support a high school teacher told to stop using his book on growing up black in America in her advanced English class. Mary Wood has taught the lesson before, but after a few of her Chapin High School students wrote a school board member in February that the unit made them feel uncomfortable and ashamed to be Caucasian. All right, so let me pause here for a second to say this. The fact that you are ashamed to be Caucasian after reading that book sounds to me like more of a you problem. Because I'm white, I've read some essays by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I might agree with some points. I may disagree with others. But at no point am I like, I'm ashamed to be white. Coates wrote his 2015 book, Between the World and Me, as a letter to his teenage son on his perceptions of the feelings and circumstances of being black in America and how racism and violence based on skin color are a part of American history. Wood asked her advancement placement English students to read the book and watch 2 videos on systemic racism she used to introduce it, then identify the themes of the works and discuss their thoughts, including whether they disagree with Coates' view. So in other words, you're not even allowed to bring these topics up to then have a discussion in class and say, hey, here's where I disagree with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Here's where I think he's wrong. Here's what my perspective is and why it's different. Apparently, you're not even allowed to do that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is like the whole point of education. You give people facts, you give people information, but also you give people various theories and you debate them and discuss them in class. Do you agree with this or disagree with this? Why not? You work on your communication skills. You try to get to the truth of the matter through discussion and debate. Like, this is one of the whole points of education. Records from the Lexington-Richland 5 school district indicate officials were worried the assignment could run afoul of a rule in the South Carolina budget banning schools from using state money to teach that anyone is consciously or unconsciously racist simply by their race, and preventing lessons from making anyone feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish based on their race. Oh, man. The whole, we need to avoid any discomfort is like, why don't you just go, watch cartoons all day and sit in a padded room, right? Like, Jesus Christ. Republicans have used the well-publicized provision to threaten other school districts in the state, and one student who complained about the lesson wrote they were pretty sure a teacher talking about systemic racism is illegal in South Carolina. Coates sat next to Wood during Monday's Lexington-Richland 5 school district meeting in Irmo in suburban Columbia. Neither spoke publicly, according to media reports. The student complaints on Wood's lesson were sent directly to a school board member instead of the teacher. So in other words, they were just narking on her. Look, this is crazy, man. This is crazy to me. And we've gone through the PEN America report on all of the book bans where, some books aren't allowed in school libraries. And, in Florida, they had to cover the bookshelves that were in the classrooms until each book was pre-approved by the state. You got all these book bans. And I remember we went through the specifics of the book bans. And it's not even what you'd think it is, right? Because the argument from the right when they're cornered on this is we're just trying to take porn out of the classrooms. Some small percentage of the books involve sexual-related stuff. Now, like we just discussed before, there could be some talking about those things in middle school and in high school, and it's not inappropriate, right? But even if you say, okay, every sex-related thing, even if it's tangentially, even if it's nothing, fine, keep it. That's a problem, get rid of it. Okay, let's accept that for a second. There's still some incredibly high percentage of these books that they're cracking down on. They're about race. They're about gender. They're about, homosexuality, that are about violence, even some violence stuff. I remember going through the PEN America report, but being surprised, they're just cracking down on all these different books. And to me, it should be the exact opposite, right? It should be keep it all in there, and you can have a discussion as to what age it's appropriate to do a lesson based on this or that, but clearly we're in the midst of a moral panic. And clearly the idea from the right is we just want to crack down on anything that paints an ideological and philosophical worldview that we don't agree with, right? And that's why you get this. Remember, Trump tried to do this on his way out, this pro-America curriculum thing, where it was just a totally biased retelling of American history, where it's downplay all the bad things we did, play up all the good things we did, give a skewed version of history where, Ronald Reagan is a savior. Now they're teaching PragerU in a lot of these classrooms across the country. Oklahoma is one. I think Florida was another. We've gone through the PragerU material. The stuff is astonishingly stupid and biased. And they even admit, we're in the business of propagandizing and indoctrinating. They admit that. They've admitted that. And so, make no mistake about it. This is a battle of worldviews. It's a culture clash. And the right-wing perspective is, we want to teach American exceptionalism. We want to teach a version of Christian nationalism. We want to hide all the things that we think are icky and bad, systemic racism, negative things about the history of the U.S., gender-related stuff, and we want to play up all the things that we think are good. Traditional family, things of that nature. So, it's crazy that at this late date, we're still debating things like this. This shouldn't be a debate. This teacher shouldn't be in trouble. The teacher with the Anne Frank thing shouldn't be in trouble. And like I said, I took health class in middle school. We were directly learning about dicks and pussies and everything in between, right? And here it's just a reference to sex in an Anne Frank book, and some woman gets in trouble. And just teaching or reading about a different perspective on systemic racism, and these kids say, I feel discomfort, crack down on the teacher. It's unconscionable, man. It really is. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.